Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rab Shmuel ben Yehoshua Rashbi, with this week's sermon for Friday, July 10th. So this is about vigilantism. One of the more popular themes in television movies in the action-adventure genre is vigilantism. This is where the protagonist, of course, takes it upon themselves, using whatever special talents or skills they may have, to avenge the deaths or unjust treatment of either themselves or someone close to them. They typically go outside the law, and in the end, it's always justified. We, the audience, cheer them on, and we get a catharsis and vicarious satisfaction. Today, we see this idea of vigilante justice playing out in our society. Many people have taken to the streets to peacefully protest the unjust treatment of people of African descent by rogue actors in various police agencies. While the bulk of the protests have been civil, some have resorted to extreme measures, like tearing down statues of historical figures that they deem to be offenders. They have occupied various areas in select town halls and some police stations, interfering with their proper functioning. Now, we see this idea of vigilante justice played out in this week's Torah portion, which is Phinehas. Phinehas is Aaron's grandson and next in line to become the high priest after his father Eleazar ben Aharon. At the end of the previous portion, the wizard or prophet Balaam failed to curse the Israelites and make them weak enough for defeat in battle. The Moabites then had their allies, the Midianites, send their daughters to seduce and corrupt the Israelites with their pagan practices, knowing the high esteem in which the Israelites held morality. Once the Israelites' morality decayed, they would be easy to defeat in battle. Phinehas then took it upon himself to mete out justice by eliminating a Simeonite prince and Midianite princess who were cavorting in public. Now, the Torah seems to condone and even approve of Phinehas' actions. God had instructed Moses to slay all the offenders, and even though Phinehas was doing so, some commentators take him to task. They say he acted rashly and not within God's specific instructions. They support this by God's comment to Moses that Phinehas has turned back my wrath from the Israelites, and I grant him my pact of friendship. In other words, tell everyone that would seek to avenge their kinsman to not do so and basically leave him alone. In fact, this seems to be one of the character traits of the Levites, Phinehas' tribe, who have a history of meting out their own justice. After some Israelites made the golden calf idol when Moses didn't descend from Mount Sinai at the time they were expected, it was the Levites that put them to the sword. Even his own tribe's progenitor, Levi himself, joined with his brother Simeon to be judge, jury, and executioner of the Shechemites when their own prince violated their sister Dinah. While the Levites' actions in this incidences seem to be justified, consider the consequences. While the other tribes became farmers or animal herders or even tradesmen, the Levites were not even able to own land. Yes, there were Levite cities scattered around the Holy Land, but any resources that they may have produced were just for their own survival. The Levites and Kohanes that officiated at the temple were dependent on the yearly contribution by the other tribes and generosity of those doing sacrifices for the various reasons. The Levites were also relegated to assisting the priests by doing their labor, carrying materials for use in the Torah, in the temple, and standing watch. In fact, some commentators feel that the Levites' duty were such so that God himself could keep an eye on them. Contrast these incidents with another incident in this portion. These are, one of my favorites, the daughters of Zelophehad. Mala, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah approached Moses and stated that their father had died of his own sins, that is, not part of any rebellion, and not left any sons to inherit his property. Of course, in those days, property ownership was male and left father to son. Now, Moses stated their case to God, who said, Cain banot Zelophehad dovrot. The pleas of the daughters of Zelophehad is just. God instructed Moses to make sure that they receive their father's portion. So, whereas the women's movement may have started 100 years ago with women's suffrage, and today we are seeing women's rights become more and more commonplace in our modern society, Judaism held up women's rights over 3,200 years ago. The point here is that we see two incidences of justice and their consequences. In the former, we have people taking the law into their own hands and the outrage it caused. In the latter, we see people who go through the system and approach the ultimate judge with humility. As a result, their names live on, and we see a sense of justice that the modern world is only now just beginning to comprehend and embrace. The Torah teaches us how to influence people for the better. While the progress may be too slow for some, evolution rather than revolution tends to have a more far-reaching effect. We should remember the daughters of Zelophehad and take their example. These women knew how to effect change. The sermon, by the way, is dedicated to the memory of Sherry Beth Reeder, and thank you to my wife, Rebbeson Chris, for feedback in helping me write the sermon.